Good morning. Well, I was told that this was a rather high Methodist church, and yes, it is. I think John Wesley would be proud. Today, we heard some very familiar words. Jesus turns to his disciples and he says, "You are the salt of the earth." And then this amazing line, "You are the light of the world. A city built on a hill cannot be hid. No one, after lighting a lamp, puts it under a bushel basket, but on a lampstand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine." Now, I'm kind of an unusual person these days. I grew up in church. I'm in my early 60s. I'm still in church. I'm a church girl. And these words are words that even in my very liberal Methodist church of childhood in Baltimore City, we actually memorized. Unlike those of you who might have grown up Southern Baptist, you memorize scripture all the time. Methodists didn't do so much of that even in the 1960s when I was growing up. But we knew these words. You are the light of the world. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine. You know the song. Yeah, how about that? We got a chorus going. That's so familiar that we sing them. We sang this song from childhood up, if you are, like me, a church girl. This morning, what I want to do is take this very familiar set of words that's embedded itself in many of our imaginations through the words of that song and put it in a whole different context for you. The context is liturgical, so it matches where we are on this particular Sunday morning. Just a few days ago, on February 2nd, there was a church festival that I didn't know about when I was a little girl. I've only discovered it in more recent decades. And the festival is the presentation of Jesus at the temple, also known as the Purification of Mary. It's a festival that is nicknamed Candlemas, like candle mass, like Christ Mass. And it happens 40 days after Christmas. 40 days was the period in which a new Jewish mother was considered to be impure after giving birth. And so after this period, she would go into the temple and give some offerings for her purification following childbirth. And in this episode that we have recorded in Luke, Jesus is brought with Mary and her husband Joseph into the temple, and it's a great scene where they run into two wonderful figures in New Testament stories. Simeon, who is considered to be this blind prophet, interestingly enough, by tradition, and Anna. And Simeon says, "Mine eyes have seen your salvation, a light for revelation to the Gentiles, for a glory for the people of Israel." And that's the presentation. That's what that festival was on February 2nd. It's always celebrated on February 2nd. Sometimes it falls on a Sunday. Most of the time it is midweek. Eventually, because of this mixture of bringing Jesus to the temple and Mary coming to temple with and giving offerings for her purification, there developed this very interesting custom around this holiday. And that is, by the Middle Ages, women in particular would bring candles to their local parish churches, where the priests would bless the candles that would be used in households and also used in liturgy for the entire year on this day. After the candles were blessed, in some locations, what would happen is that the women of the church would take their blessed candles out into the world, and they would walk through the streets of their tiny villages, and they would take then their light back to their homes. This is still done in some places, mostly in the Caribbean and in Latin and South America, where Candlemas is sort of accompanied by these great torchlight processions of people wandering through the streets, carrying their light, the light often of justice, a light of peace, through very interesting poor cities and political situations, with usually a statue of the Blessed Virgin Mary. And that's Candlemas. It's also considered to be the very last festival of Christmas. I bet you didn't know that. Just a couple days ago, we had the last festival of Christmas. You could have left your Christmas tree up until February 2nd, and nobody could say anything bad about that liturgically. Now, that's the context in which I want to think about these words of Jesus. Because for the last 2 months, we have been doing an extraordinary thing liturgically. Together, we have journeyed through an entire season of light. It began at the end of November with the beginning of Advent. And remember, at that moment, we here in the Northern Hemisphere were heading toward the darkest day of the year. And in that darkest time of the year, we would each week light a single candle. A candle of hope, a candle of joy, a candle of peace, a candle of love. Candles against the darkness. Candles of waiting with great anticipation for God to break in to the darkness. Advent, of course, cracks open and gives us the Nativity. It gives us Christmas, where the birth of Jesus is accompanied by angelic beams of light from the heavens, where we light the Christ candle, where we sit in congregations like this and sing Silent Night together and pass the light of the candle through the whole of the gathering. Light dawns. Light shines in the darkness, and the darkness shall not overcome it, is the message of the Nativity and Christmas. Those 12 days are all stories about light. And then at the end of the 12 days, we get the great story of the wise men following a star that is over the manger. The star leads us to follow the light, leads us to come and see the one who has been born. It is about the manifestation of light in the world, the revelation of all of the joy, peace, hope that we have been waiting for during Advent. And so waiting, fulfillment, following, and then Candlemas, this extraordinary day that Protestants really didn't celebrate very much, is about taking that light into the world in the last and final arc of the whole of the Christmas season. We weren't just celebrating one day. We were walking spiritually through 3 seasons tied together by this arc of light. And it's all over now. And here we are on this very odd Sunday, 3 weeks before the beginning of Lent. This particular Sunday marks something we call pre-Lent. Isn't that a clever title? For the Lenten season, sometimes referred to as Shrovetide. It is this little sort of shoulder season between the glories of all that light we just celebrated and moving into the spiritual reflective time of Lent. And these words, these familiar words of Jesus, are what open us toward this shift. You are the light. Wait a minute, Jesus. We just celebrated 2 months of waiting for you being the light? And now you're turning around and telling us that we are the light. Are you saying we are the ones we were waiting for? Well, yes. There are a few passages in the New Testament that are quite as clear as this one. Jesus says, you are the light of the world. You are looking for me? You are the light of the world. In a certain way, this text needs absolutely no explanation. There are sermons that could make this text really hard. But it's as simple as that song from Sunday school. You're the light of the world. You can't be hid. No one, after lighting a lamp, puts it under a basket. You put it up on a lampstand so that it lights up the whole room. Let your light shine. It is really simple. We've been waiting for the light. The light appears, and then we find ourselves being told by the very light that we are light. Now, to me, the simplicity of this text and this amazing story that we've been living in leaves only one question, and I don't know how many of you might have thought of it. That song from childhood made me think that the light was something that I could pick up, like a candle or a flashlight. It was something that I had to get. But Jesus says something else. He says, just you are the light. In other words, the light is not separate from who we are. If we've walked through this story, if we've been part of this journey, if we find ourselves following this one who we've been directed to by the star, we simply become light. It's not different from us. It's not an I-it relationship. It's not a distanced thing. We can hide it, perhaps, but we can't choose to not be it because we just are it. So the question is, what kind of light are we? I don't know if you've been to Lowe's or Home Depot lately looking for light bulbs. But this is a really troubling question at Lowe's. If you go into Lowe's, what you get is you have to decide what kind of light you want to buy. Is it fluorescent, halogen, incandescent, LED? What kind of light do I need in this particular situation? I have stood in that aisle looking at light bulbs shaking because I didn't know. Is it warm? Is it cool? Do I want blue? Do I want white? What kind of light is needed? That's actually a real question. What kind of light is needed? You might also think about other situations of light that aren't so pleasant. I'm not really a fan of Vegas, for example. I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona, and we sometimes go up to Las Vegas, and boy, there are lights there. Ooh, lights everywhere. You can't get away from the lights. You might also, I live now in Washington, D.C., I go up to New York, been to Times Square. I'm starting to have a little bit of glaucoma in one of my eyes, and when I go to Times Square and all those lights are blinking in my eyes, it's hard to shake the sort of weird stuff that begins to happen in my field of vision because of the lights. You might think about police holding a flashlight like this. We've seen this so often now in these recent episodes of police violence. When the police hold a light in someone's face to blind them, and they can't even see who's holding the flashlight. Or you might also consider a glare of light that suddenly exposes a fear or a danger that you were unaware of. There are lots of kinds of lights around. The poet John O'Donohue said, "In the glare of neon times, let our eyes not be worn by surfaces that shine with hunger made attractive." neon times. A kind of distracting light, a light of money and power and entertainment, a kind of light that takes our attention away from what is good and beautiful and true and casts other things as being desirable, as being surfaces that shine. O'Donohue continues his poem with a number of images. He says that our thought may be true light, finding their way into words which have the weight of shadow to hold layers of truth. We don't want false light. We don't want light that takes away from things like justice and goodness and kindness. We want true light. A true light which understands the weight of shadow and holds all of the layers of truth. May we never place, Donahue continues, our trust in minds claimed by empty light, where one-sided certainties are driven by false desires. When we look into the heart, may our eyes have the kindness and reverence of candlelight. That the searching of our own minds be equal to the oblique crevices and corners where the mystery continues to dwell, glimmering in fugitive light. When we are confined inside to a dark house of suffering, that moonlight may find its way into a window. When we become false and lost, that the severe noon light would cast our shadows clearer. When we love, that dawn light would lighten our feel upon the waters. And as we grow old, that twilight would illuminate treasure in the fields of memory. Light, you are the light, true light, candlelight, furtive light, moonlight, noonlight, dawn light, twilight, diffused light, slant light, warm light, cool light, rainbow light, blazing light, beacons of light, starlight. All different kinds of light. Jesus turns to his disciples and says, "You are the light." I always wonder if that's just you, like as in me, or each one of you individually. You are the light. Or, of course, you are the light, as in we, the whole community. Recently, I feel more that this text, "You are the light," is less about picking up my candle and letting my candle shine. That is a first step towards something different and much more beautiful. That being the light is a matter of knowing of where we are at any given time in our lives on the spiritual light spectrum. And to understand the light that we need at any given moment, the light that our communities need at any given moment, and to be aware of the light we are giving off. And so, familiar words. You are the light. I hope today that I've opened them up to you in a new way. We simply are light. Straightforward, easy, simple, declarative sentence of Jesus. You just are the light of the world. And then the question hangs in the air. What kind of light will we be? Amen.